Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Ehrenworth, signing on to the SignOffPod Frameworth podcast for yet another week. It's the forum for all the stories you didn't know you wished you knew about the world of sports and sports marketing. I'm joined in studio across the table for the first time in weeks from the president of Frameworth Sports Marketing and my father, Brian Ehrenworth.
Well, I only missed one.
You only missed one? Technically, no. We got ahead of it.
And I listened to it last night with Ethan. It was great.
That was a great episode.
Very informative. What happens over in the KHL. We even hit the Russian podcast charts over there.
Can you believe it? Yeah, we were, I think top 60 of all podcasts in or sports podcasts in Russia. It was kind of crazy.
That's what happens when you play in the KHL.
As Ethan Werrick did, a Chinese team playing in the KHL. It was a really interesting story. If you as the listener haven't heard that, definitely go back and check it out. But we did have some comments, you know, as interesting as our podcasts have been, talking to broadcasters and talking to players, coaches, agents, that sort of thing. It does come down to the fact that we are a sports marketing company and we deal a lot with collectibles, and a lot of people want us to kind of sometimes focus more in that vein. And that's what we're going to do this week. We actually took to the internet and got some questions from our listeners. We've been collecting them over the past couple months as well. And we're going to get to some of those, just as some jumping off points. Actually, funny bit of information there. I don't know if you knew this, Dad, but when I was recording, because if you're confused as to how my dad was gone for 4 weeks basically, and only missed one episode, we had got ahead on the recording. So it had been a while. When I was recording with Ethan, it was just he and myself. I made a comment at the beginning of the podcast, like, guess where Brian is. He's on vacation again. And I said a couple more things after that I
heard them.
That I ended up cutting from the podcast because I'm like, it was said in jest, but I'm like, if you heard that, you'd get into your own head. I was, talking about how you were complaining about being so busy before you left. I'm like, well, hey, guess what? You're going on vacation. It could be worse. Yeah. But I figured I'd say that to your face as opposed to, well, you're on a cruise ship shaking your fist at me from the Mediterranean.
Yeah, waiting for our luggage to arrive from TAP Airlines that never showed up for 22 days.
Right. You had to do a whole new realm of clothes shopping. Speaking of collecting, you were collecting a whole new batch of clothes.
Right.
So as we usually do off the top, we usually read a rating or a review from one of our listeners, but because we're going to be doing the giveaway slightly different this week, we figure we'd skip right past that, and we're going to be doing a lot of customer and listener interaction in this one anyway, so there will be some shout outs. We're going to be giving away a signed 8x10 photo at the end of this, so if you were someone who submitted a question, make sure to listen through the whole thing. At the end, we're going to announce who the winner is, and we'll get you your 8x10 photo there. First question. Something that's been sitting for a while, actually, a question that got bumped from one of the earlier podcasts, but I wanted to get into this. It's from Andy Stevenson, who has two questions, actually, that he wants us to get to. My first ever autograph was from Dave Keon. It was a collegiate sports store in North York, I think. He signed the side near the heel of my new white North Star running shoes. I was about 10 years old. I remember the way he signed his name with a styled K. I still prefer the older players' autographs. You can read them. A lot of the younger players are difficult to determine who signed the name. I know counterfeits would be too easy today. The players could be doctors the way it's written, just my opinion. And while it's not specifically a question from Andy, I wanted to address that on the podcast because of the way in which players have changed their signatures over the years. You can ask anybody who has the best signature in hockey, and it's always going to be someone from like maybe Gordie Howe, maybe a Johnny Bower. Wayne Gretzky has a great one as well. What are some of the best signatures you've seen, and why do you think it's changed now so that the younger generation doesn't quite sign their name as legibly?
Well, a couple of things. One, downstairs cleaning out the basement, found one of your sticks that I got you. It was a white maple leaf stick with the team autograph.
Right.
Being a hockey fan and from that era, which would have been at least 20 years ago that I got you that stick, I didn't recognize and couldn't place. And normally I'm pretty good with the older numbers. So this was an interim era from when I was a kid and when I'm an adult.
This I think was early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know I would recognize Doug Gilmour's signature or Wendell Clark's because we still do a lot with them. I didn't recognize one, and their numbers were there. And I'm trying to figure out who was 17 at that time. And it would Wendell, but it wasn't Wendell's signature. So even from that time on, they were starting to get pretty sloppy. which was something that I don't even think that Bobby Hull in the day put his number there. I think they just signed there. I can't remember.
Yeah, a lot of players didn't put their number.
Well, back then, because you could read the name.
Right.
So, but now the reason for the number is primarily because you don't know who it is unless you see the number there.
Now, why is that? Because, it's funny. I remember growing up as a kid, whenever someone would ask for my signature, before I knew what signing a check even meant, people would be like, oh, sign, like it's a signature. I thought you had to develop like a scribbly representation of your name.
You grew up in that era.
I didn't know that you had to. But to be fair, even you, the way you sign your name doesn't look anything like Brian Ehrenworth.
I do sign my name with a nice script if it's on, like for our COAs. Yes. I made sure I spelled it out with every letter.
Right.
But for paychecks, no. no, I just scribble it. And so I had always bad handwriting unless I really took my time. And so when I'm rushed, it just becomes a blur. The best signatures always, almost to a person, are the older players. Bobby Hull had a beautiful signature.
Oh, yeah.
Great story about Bobby Hull. He's in here one time doing an autograph signing in Frameworth.
Yeah.
Bobby is known to be a bit of a drinker. Mm-hmm. And so halfway through the autograph signing session, which took place at 11, so about 11:30.
Is it a.m.?
A.m.
Yeah.
He says to me, you have any red wine around here? I said, well, yeah, I got a bottle in my office somebody gave me. He says, well, let's open that red wine. So within a half an hour, that was gone. And so was the signing was over. Never affected his signature.
Sure.
He took his time. He signed beautifully. And he says, let's go for lunch. So we go for lunch over at Shoeless Joe's around the corner. Used to be a restaurant there. It was a sports bar. Well, they were thrilled that I walked in with Bobby Hull.
Of course.
Right? And, of course, as time went on, I knew the owner. So as time went on, he started signing his name a little bit and for waitresses and that, or for the owners. And they had him sign on a plate that they were going to hang on the wall. And then we were there till 4 p.m. Okay, the story goes on and on about how he was going to drive to Kingston, but I wouldn't let him, so he stayed at house. And you remember that?
I was up in my bedroom playing The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker, and I come downstairs and there's a Legend of hockey in my kitchen.
Yeah, but that's a longer story. But the funny part is that Bobby's signature never changed, no matter how much he had to drink. Right. It was always a beautiful signature. And then the waitresses would come over and, can you sign my top? And they would tighten it. They would pull the top down tight so that he could do it. And I've never seen a guy sign so nice but so slow in my life. He was that B went over and it was maybe for boobs. I don't know. But Bobby Hull, one of the great signatures of all time. And I asked him about that, and he was disgusted with some of the newer players. That he said, when we were growing up, I was told, you sign your name so people can read it.
For sure.
The old school guys, Jean Belleville, beautiful handwriting.
Right.
Eddie Shack had couldn't read or write,
right,
for the most part, but he had a beautiful signature. They taught him how to sign his name, and he signed it beautifully. So all those old school guys, you could read every letter. You knew who they were for the most part. And now today, I would say that Sidney Crosby has a pretty nice signature.
Well, that's kind of like somewhere they meet in the middle. I mean, you would never look at Sidney's autograph and think that's rushed, or in fact, it's almost the opposite. It was purposely designed for his identity and his number and his name. It's his name made up of the number 87 in a bunch of different variations, which is very cool.
Very similar to Wayne Gretzky's in a sense that they had the Y and the number goes in there. Both Wayne and Sidney take their time. And you should see the scrutiny of those guys' signatures.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they will make sure that the fans make sure that this is a good, and I watch on the Wayne Gretzky, some of the Facebook page, Sean Chalks and some of the others, how somebody will say, do you think this is a real autograph?
Right.
And these guys know better than I do with it was his early signature. It was an in-person signature. Sure. And some of them look good to me, and they'll say, no, it's wrong because of this, this, and this.
Interesting.
So I don't know how people analyze the scribbles of some of the guys, but that's the nature of the beast these days.
Absolutely, it is. As we're recording, the door just burst open in the recording studio and my dog walked in. So if you
Frankie,
heard that, I apologize for that. You may have seen some of that on the video.
Looking for a treat.
Actually, if you haven't watched us over on YouTube yet, the full episode does go up on YouTube. And if you're paying attention, I've noticed this while editing, in the background of the video, sometimes we're recording in our boardroom and there's windows facing out into the hallway. You'll see my dog running right there.
I saw that in the last
little Easter egg there. Yeah, it's kind of nice. So I think one important thing, Andy, to mention about that is, yes, some of the players nowadays have an autograph that you wouldn't necessarily on the outset be able to differentiate or assign to a player based on what it looks like. Like Sidney Crosby's signature doesn't necessarily look like Sidney Crosby written out. However, there is kind of a cool element of like design and personality put in some of them.
Right.
Some of them, not always the case, because we've also dealt with some people that it essentially just looks like a scribble regardless of where you're looking. And great way to get into that story about Bobby Hull as well. If you don't follow us on Instagram at Frameworth Sports, we put out the call to action for any questions for the podcast as well. We got a few of those just this morning prior to recording. I'm going to get one out of the way right off the bat, okay? Because I filmed the video asking for the questions, wearing the same clothes that I'm wearing as we're recording. Again, check us out on YouTube if you need to. I don't need to describe my outfit to you. It'll paint a pretty good picture based on this question, which we're just going to skip right past. Are you a lumberjack? From Ryan the Boy on Instagram. By the way, if you're looking for legal advice, maybe avoid Ryan the Boy on Instagram.
That's my nephew. What are you doing?
I figured I'd just move right past that one. A question that we get all the time, and we've answered it in kind of in circular ways. A lot of people talk about, some of the nicest athletes we've met and how hockey players seem to consistently bring that to the table for whatever reason. But Gino M79 asks, have you ever dealt with a rude athlete while in the shop? And I don't know that we need to get into names specifically, but not every situation dealing with an athlete has proven to be a positive experience. Does anything come to the top of your head, some experiences that maybe rubbed you the wrong way?
One really always sticks in my mind. It was a basketball player for the Raptors, big star. So I don't really want to besmirch him, but we signed it.
That's because he beat you up, right? Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, there'll be people that love him as an individual and as a fan of the player. So I don't want to tarnish them, because there are some things that I've seen by players that really, change my image of them. But anyways, this guy comes in to do the signing, walks in, virtually says nothing to us. We paid some big bucks to have him. He sat down, put his phone on the desk, hardly said a word the whole time, and just signed his name, stopped, read his text, stopped, did some signings, I don't even think he shook hands on the way out. This was years ago, and walked out the door. And I thought, what a rude, ignorant person.
Yeah.
Great basketball player. But just really bothered me. The other thing that, not to do with necessarily an autograph signing, but I was just telling this story last week to somebody. When I was 18, my dad took my dad took me to Las Vegas to play in one of the first Pro-Am golf tournaments.
Cool.
My dad was a big gambler, or not big gambler, but he was looked after. And back then, the mob ran Vegas, so he would go to the pit boss and at the blackjack tables and say, my son Brian here, he's 21 years old, right? Yes, Mr. Ehrenworth, he's 21.
Oh, wow.
And
what is the statute of limitations on this? We're going to get someone in trouble.
It was 21 years old was you need to be to play cards. No, I was 18, I'm playing. And I'm sitting next to this lady. And she seemed like an older lady to me at the time, but she was probably 40 years old, 35, whatever it was. But anyway, so we're playing for about an hour and a half, and it's about 3:30. And then all of a sudden, she gets a tap on the shoulder. And I said, and the guy says, hi, honey. He gives her a kiss. Says, mind if I play cards with you? There's only the two of us at the table. So she says, oh, sure. Meet my friend Brian. Brian, this is my husband, Ray Nitschke. Big linebacker for the Green Bay Packers.
Okay. I'm not as much a football guy. Yeah.
Okay. So, oh my God, this is Ray Nitschke. So we play for a little while longer, and then Bill Russell walks into the room.
Oh, no way. There's a name.
And taps her on the shoulder and, hey, how you doing? How was your game? Blah, blah, blah. Meet my friend Brian. So Bill Russell comes in. This was a trail of one after another. And then finally, he gets a tap on the shoulder. Hey, how you doing, Mick? Mickey Mantle.
No way.
Mickey Mantle is there, my all-time hero at the time, this years ago. The Mick, and he says, do you mind if I join you? And he sits right next to me.
Wow.
And we start playing cards. And he's nice as hell. He's obviously had a few drinks on the golf course. He drank quite a bit in those days. He was known for that. And then as time went on, he started a little bit of a losing streak. And he got a little belligerent with the dealer. And then he got more belligerent. And to the point where at one point he was disgusted with the cards and threw the cards at the dealer.
No way.
And they're not... The mob's running Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
And
they don't care who.
Mickey Mantle could pretty much commit murder in there, and they're not kicking him out.
Yeah.
Right? But it just changed my whole image. This was like a hero of mine. And then I'm saying, and then she looked over at me and she said, he's got a drinking problem. Now, she had a drinking problem too. Probably I did at the same time.
You're 18.
So, but I wasn't throwing my cards at anybody. Right. I would have got kicked out. But that's another story about rudeness.
You've never told me that story? No.
I can't even remember all the big name guys that I saw from the time. There was hockey players. They brought in, and boxers. I think there was a big name boxer. Oh, might have been maybe Jim Brown. I forget.
Sure.
I forget the guys that I met, but it was if I had a pen and paper there, I could have made a fortune.
That's honestly, just on the signatures alone.
Just on signatures.
Well, you could have picked up those cards that Mickey threw. Get him to sign the back of those. Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's a really cool story. And obviously before you got into this realm, because at the time, I'm assuming Frameworth would have been around, or Frame Guild at the time.
No, my dad's company
was,
but there was nothing to do with sports.
Right,
back then.
exactly.
It was a picture frame company.
Which, I mean, go way back into the history of this podcast to learn the history of how Frameworth got going. Right. But it started off as just a picture framing company and changed quite a bit from then. I've got a story that I can't remember if I've told it on this podcast before, but it does have to do with the signing, and I will name the athlete because we say so many great things about this athlete, and it's not this athlete acting up or anything like that. But it was a moment that I nearly shit my pants because I was dealing with the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Do you know this story?
I think I know the one you're talking about.
So we had an event at Frameworth, and we had to provide signed jerseys to each of the people who came. It was a big event. You pay for your ticket, you get dinner, you get a gift package, you get a photo with Wayne. Great night, super big success. But yeah, we needed to make sure we had enough signed Edmonton Oilers jerseys for him to come. So we lined them all up on the table. He signed what he could, and then he had to leave and come back before the signing went. So we counted them all. We said, okay, we have 63 jerseys that we need to get signed before this starts. So Wayne, when you come in, before you go take the photos, we're going to have them all laid out for you. It's going to be super quick, this and that. So Wayne comes in. He's got the marker in his hand. He's talking to some people, and he starts signing, and I'm there moving them all aside. And keep in mind, like I've been in a situation where we're doing signings with other companies and they try to sneak in the odd random thing here and there. And
not necessarily the odd, a lot. And it never goes over well. And all I'm thinking is I don't want to be that guy. Exactly. So I counted this pile like 5 or 6 times. I'm not going to get this wrong. 63 jerseys, to the point where this is years ago and I remember the number. And Wayne's making his way through and he's talking to people in the room. I think his agent is here at the time, his manager, and we're all talking, we're laughing and everything. And at a certain point, he's rounding the table with like the last 2 stacks of jerseys or something. And he looks at me and he just says, that's 63. And then keeps on signing. And I was like, oh shit, like, did I miscount? Did someone add more jerseys? I was pissing myself because all I could think of was the story of Wayne Gretzky, where he goes all the way down the ice, dekes out the entire team, scores, and then tells the referee that he miscounted and there were 6 players on the ice. Right. How did you know? It's because I counted them as I passed by them. And I'm like, clearly I can't be right about this. It's Wayne. Like he doesn't make mistakes. Turns out he did miscount, but the damage was done, I think. I don't know if he thought I was trying to pull one over on him, but I recounted afterwards another 2 times to make sure. Yeah.
And it was just one of those circumstances. So
Wayne would never question our honesty. We're still very good friends. Matter of fact, Pauline's getting married this week.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You were trying to dig the dirt out of Eddie Mio on our podcast playing TMZ. That was a few weeks back.
I saw Wayne a few weeks back and he told me.
Now, kind of to add on to that, not any negative situations with the players, but Mark Paradis Jr. on Instagram, who's been a huge supporter of the podcast, as has Andy Stevenson.
Thanks, Mark.
As I mentioned, submitted this question: what goes into preparing a signing? Do signees have riders, and what is the oddest request?
When you say riders,
like I think what Mark is kind of inferring is that prior to a signing, we'll have a contract written up, and it's like at every signing we need X, Y, and Z. I think Mark might be surprised to learn that the athletes typically are not nearly that needy. We have the contracts and we know what it's going to cost per signature and this and that, but it's very, very rare that they would say we need X, Y, or Z in the room prior to us getting started.
We're a fairly unique company in the sense that I don't even push contracts and things. If a player, we usually originally start with a contract, and then when it comes to an end, I don't find it necessary because most players want to stay with us.
Yeah.
We treat them so well. They're always skeptical until they see how you run your company, whether you're telling them there's 100 numbers in front and put 110 there, which is a typical kind of move in the industry that, people try and sneak in some extras to lower the cost. If you try and do that and get caught, you'll never deal with the guy again. So that said, Sidney Crosby's been with us for 15 years, or whatever.
Yep.
So more. Anyways, 18. And he's still with us, and they trust us. And so all of that said,
can I interrupt you for 1 second there?
Yeah.
Because your phone just rung a little bit, and
it's
this
a ding.
is not,
it's a bell.
It's a bell, and this is not to call you out on having your audio on, which you shouldn't, but you do, and for a good reason. Can you tell us what that sound just meant? This may baffle some people who are listening to this.
Well, since we got this new platform, Shopify,
you may have heard of it.
I've logged in because I'm an old school guy. So they set up this thing on my phone where when we have a sale come through on our deal of the day or whatever,
just our website, anywhere on our website,
I get this bell that goes off. It's kind of like It's a Wonderful World when
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. When you hear a bell ring, an angel gets his wings.
Yeah.
Well, when I hear a bell ring, we've just made a sale.
I was going to say, when you hear the bell ring, a collector bought a stick blade. I think that's what that means.
And the funny thing was, I'm on this cruise ship last week, and we ran a mystery box thing with Sidney Crosby boxes, which are always popular and always sell out.
A shout out to the Sidney Crosby collectors page on YouTube for always showing some support with that as well.
Yeah, it's huge. So I'm on the cruise ship. It's now, I think the thing launches at 10 in the morning, and it's now, we're in cocktail hour on the ship.
Right.
So we're sitting there, and I got my phone on, and I didn't turn the sound off. And all of a sudden it's ding, 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 ding. And Lori, my wife, is going, what the hell is that? And could you turn your phone off? I said, no, I'm really enjoying that sound. It was like one ding after another, straight for it would have gone straight for an hour. She finally made me, after about 5 minutes, turn it off because it was interrupting all our conversations with other people.
In a world where everyone is advising people to turn off notifications on your phone, you are deciding to go the opposite route. I love it. Sorry, but you were telling the story about Sidney Crosby and the contract and
yeah. So when we go to a signing, there is a lot of prep. So over the years, we've learned how to do it right. We have, I actually came up with the idea because we're always trying to, how many pens do we need? What kind of pens do we need, et cetera? And I said, why do we do that? Why don't we just put them all in? It just comes from my fishing experience.
Sure.
Like a tackle box.
Yeah.
So I took an actual
literally
a tackle box with all the little plastic trays, and we put all the pins in there, or pens in there. So when we go to a signing, we know we're not going to run out. We always have a full selection, way more than we need, and we just take the ones out. But even then, every piece that we do, we still take a photocopy of an image of it and then handwrite on the photocopy where the signature should
literally
be.
say, sign here in the pen, put it in the same bag as everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that way there's no mistakes when the player looks at it. They'll say, a lot of the times they'll know automatically where to sign. Sometimes it'll be something a little different. Where do you want me to sign here? And so we just show them the picture. This is the way it should look, and whatever. And they go ahead and do that.
Yeah. And it's funny because, we've been doing signings for a long time. And you talk about that very almost primitive solution of having a tackle box with all the pens in it. But the number of changes and decisions we had to make to streamline the process of athlete signings. Mark, one thing that I would say to address your question is most of the signings that we do don't take place at Frameworth. We usually have to travel to go to the athlete, whether it's in a hotel room or here or there. So what is the rider? They don't really have a rider because sometimes it's in their house.
Right. Well, no, and many times it's been in their house. And I've seen a lot of nice houses. We've been at Pat Kane's house. Sidney will do it. Only the guys that really, and you have good relationships. But we were at Alec Manoah's place in Florida, which was a nice signing to do a few weeks back. Before the season started, we flew down there with my crew and did a signing way up in his condo. And he was such a gentleman. What a nice guy he is. And now he's lighting it up. But going to the place, setting up in advance, making sure that if we were at their home or wherever you are in a boardroom at a hotel, that the furniture is protected from ink spillage and stuff like that. Making sure that the stuff is like, we're known for being so efficient. My team here is amazing. They have everything laid out. They mix the pucks with the photos, with the canvases.
They stagger groups
so that the movement of the product goes as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Well, because it's a lot easier to put a box of pucks in front of a player. They'll sign that without the person who's arranging the signing needing to move anything around, and that gives them time to say collect up some of the photos which have been drying, or lay out another batch of 16 by 20s, because some things are easier to get signed than other things.
All the things have to be layered if it's going to smudge, and so that's really important to the players, and they love we've had players come from our place to do it that are non-exclusive to do another place, and they just go, this is amazing compared to what I just went through. So it's really important to have that professional attitude. And when you do it that well, you're going to get a better signature because they have more time to do it. And they get through it quicker, and they know it's not, they're not bored. And my job is to go there and kind of keep them busy in conversation while the other guys move all the stuff around so that time passes a little quicker.
It's also worth noting that one of the reasons why we can get a better signature is because people also, Mark, you may not realize this, or anyone else who's asked a question about the signings may not realize this, but when we're doing the signings, the athlete typically does not touch the products that they're signing. That's not to say that they obviously sign it or they'll put their hand against it while they're signing something, but they don't move the photo away or the puck away or the jersey number away. We have someone there doing it for them, so that all they're doing is the signature. This helps two things. One, maintain the consistency of the signature and the way that it looks, and also to facilitate the ease of the signing and make sure it goes as efficiently as possible. So there's way more that goes into these things than people may realize. It's just not a rider.
Here's a good example. We've been doing a lot of helmets lately.
Right.
Now, you go to and they come in boxes.
Right.
So we try and get there ahead of time and open all the boxes, get the things ready, lined up. But if the player is sitting there waiting for you to take them out of the box, that's a pain. The other tricky part about autograph signings is no matter what you do, it's the wrong way.
Sure.
So over the years, Sidney would say, okay, let's do a signing at after practice at, he's on the ice at 8:00 in the morning. Let's do it at, 10:00. Oh, you set up. You get there at 8 and you start setting up. And then all of a sudden, as you get to the rink at like 10 to 8 or whatever it is, when the practice starts, you'll get a message. Sidney wants to sign before the practice.
Yes.
And then you're waiting. Everybody's running around like crazy. Yeah. So sometimes they change what they want to do. You can get there 2 hours early and then they're 2 hours late.
Yes.
Or you can get there,
right on time.
And they want to go early. So it's usually hurry up and wait, but
there's definitely a lot of that. It's funny, it just becomes second nature to the way that we do signings, right? It's, you're expecting these sorts of things and these hiccups and that, but that comes with almost decades, plural, of experience of doing these things. Something always goes wrong the first time, signing a canvas with this brand new paint pen and realizing that it's not going to dry for a minute. Right. And you're like, where do I like we have giant 20 by 30 canvases. The rooms are never big enough. I did one signing, I think it was with 2 Pittsburgh Penguins. It wasn't Sidney. I think it was Chris Letang and one other athlete. I can't remember who it was, but it was, we spoke to the hotel. We arranged to get a room for the signing. They said, yep, It was a conference room. We get there. It was not a conference room. It was basically a janitor's closet. And now we've got canvases and like hundreds of items for each players with one tiny little desk, and we don't want to look bad. So we were literally getting things signed and running them outside into the hallway. We had one person positioned in the hallway to make sure no one came around and stole anything. It was those sorts of things. They give you some funny stories, but they also... I think I sweat more during those signings than when I'm actually playing the sports.
Well, Nick, our previous guy that ran most of them, and now Abby's doing them. And I tend to try and get to as many as I can. Sometimes I can't, depending on my schedule. But we've done them in good places, like in Montreal in the practice facility. We'll set up in another dressing room where there's nobody using it, and then Carey Price can come from, get dressed, shower up, and then come in and do it. So it's very convenient for them. We try and make it as convenient as possible. Sometimes the guys, generally, we try and find a place that it's all timing when the player, so we get to know, like I know where Sidney, when and how to ask him, because we could always use more product. Sure. In fact, he just signed some stuff today for us in what we call a care package, but we need a big signing for him because we're almost out of everything. And I look at the schedule and I know he's not going to want to do it this day because it's his first day off, and then little gaps in the schedule. He also doesn't like to do it as much in Pittsburgh because there's a lot for him to do in Pittsburgh. But if he comes to Buffalo, for instance, he likes to do it in Buffalo because there's all our friends in Buffalo. There's not much to do in Buffalo. So they come in on the bus, they put their stuff in their room, they come straight to the signing, and then they go to dinner. Yeah. And that happens in many out of town, which is great. They spend an hour signing and then off they go, and they haven't missed anything.
I've said it before about Buffalo. It is the greatest city. The grayest city in the world. Sorry, I misspoke there. Sorry. No. Listen, we're from Canada. We take a lot of guff from the United States, so we get to throw some back every so often. But you got some great sports teams. We'll say that. Here's one. And thanks again, Mark, for that question. We got on a couple tangents, but all some good stuff. This is one that I wanted to get into and kind of touches on a question that a few people asked. Zachary Bellison asked via email, which, by the way, if you do have any questions that you want us to answer in a future episode, you can email us SignOffPod@Frameworth.com, and we'll set them aside until the next Q&A episode that we do. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Thank you very much. Been listening since day one, introducing a few coworkers, friends, and even my girlfriend to the pod along the way." Wow, weird flex. You got a girlfriend. Cool. Not all of us. No. Actually, I do. I can't. I have to stop making those jokes now. She's gonna hear
one day
me.
I'll meet her, but that's okay.
Yeah, you're still not convinced she's real. Anyways, I have a couple questions, he says, as Mikey changes the subject. How do you choose what players to target to get an exclusive deal with? That's one of the questions that he has. And then he's got a few more, but let's start with that because that's a great question. We've told the story countless times on this about our initial introduction to Sidney Crosby on the podcast. How we signed him at, I think, 14 years old and went on from there. But, the landscape doesn't change. There's always new players coming in, always people in our ear telling us this is the next big thing. It used to be this is the next Wayne Gretzky. Now it's this is the next Sidney Crosby is what we always hear. What is some of your insight, Dad? And you've been doing this for a while.
Here's how it evolved in the beginning. With the signing of Sidney Crosby, we were ahead of the curve. So I would say in particular hockey. So we get Sidney Crosby on board. We did a really good job with him. CAA didn't do much in autographs, but they see an opportunity to make some extra marketing dollars for CAA. So they liked what we did with the players. They trusted us. So basically everybody that was one of their clients, and they had a lot of big clients coming in, they recommended that they would come to us. Sure. So that was easy. Sidney Crosby comes on board, and Jonathan Toews and Pat Kane and anybody that CAA had. The downside to that was sometimes CAA wanted us to do deals with guys that they thought were going to be great players, or maybe they tried to convince us they're going to be great players so that they can show some love to the players at our expense. Right. But that was part of the deal because they'd give us everything. So we took some of the lost leaders and the other guys, et cetera. And so that said, we got a little bit lazy because we were automatically getting the CAA players. Sure. And then we started started thinking we were bigger than we were, and we wanted to own the whole market. We went after everybody else, et cetera. So it was randomly, we're just going to go
I remember
everybody.
at one point having a stack of contracts on my desk it was all kind of boilerplate contracts, but it was $20,000 guarantee here, $50,000 guarantee here. And there were like 10, 15 contracts for multiple players across the league. And we just assumed it was all going to work out like it worked out with Sidney, because that's just what
Sidney
happens.
was a huge success right off the bat, obviously, but then there were other players that got traded. Sure. So we started getting some losses and some, we had a lot of financial commitments, which caused us a lot of financial stress in those days. So we learned a little bit more. We kind of backed away, and we didn't want to be all things to all people. So we specialized in what we felt were our A athletes. Mm-hmm. And we go after those. Now, sometimes you miss the boat, and sometimes you think something's better than it is. We went with not a slight, but Gilbert Brulé, which is supposed to be one of the big names coming up.
Who actually a player who played with Ethan Warwick in Russia.
Oh, he did?
He did, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So he didn't end his career. He just didn't.
No, he's still playing professionally.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. So we did some signings before he even came into the league. Then, there's guys like Connor McDavid that come up. Well, I was asleep at the switch for that, so I didn't really get in on the thing on the deal at the beginning, which we missed out. There are other players that come in, like Mitch Marner. His agent came to us when he was playing in London, said, are you interested? And London, and we got a commitment, and we've had so many experiences where we sign a guy in the juniors and never really makes it. So Mitch was pretty good prospect. So, but we kind of took a pass because of the guarantee. We ended up building a relationship after the fact. So now we work with Paul and Mitch Marner on a regular basis.
That's worth pulling on just a little bit, because you mentioned, he was in juniors, and when, Zach, it's a good question, because obviously we'd like to take a chance on every player that comes across, but it typically ends up getting to a point where kids are getting discovered earlier and earlier.
Yes.
And they're now going to be the next big thing earlier and earlier. If you want to make a commitment to someone, you basically have to do it 4 years prior to them making the NHL.
Well,
3 years sometimes.
We set that mark.
Precedent. We set the precedent.
Right.
I mean, I think it probably would have happened eventually. However, we've had a lot of situations where we've bid on a player and we said, we want this person to be with us from juniors onwards. You factor in one league at least in the NHL. We just had a meeting on that today, actually. And we look back on some of those pitches, which we lost out on, which means another company paid more than what we had pitched. And that player isn't even in the NHL.
Right.
Or is still kind of...
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. I'm not afraid to say
it.
Lafreniere.
Oh, sure. Who is in the NHL, obviously,
right.
But not yet.
So I'm not sure whether we even put a bid on it, but we were very interested. And by the time I checked in on it, Upper Deck had him.
Right.
Now, he's a good player and maybe going to be a great player.
Right.
But if I had to pay the guarantee that I did back then, hoping that he'd be what he is, I would have been way overpaid.
Right.
As of right now.
Sure.
Whether that'll be the case moving forward, I don't know. But I would have lost a lot of money to this point. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what Upper Deck's position was, but I assume they outbid us or gave them a bigger number than we were. There's other players like that. We bid on Shane Wright.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah.
No, I mean, we were in the offering. We put a really substantial offer down there. We were very close to getting him, and then we lost him. But to this point in time, and he's going to be a good one, no question. Of course. But I don't think this was so long ago that, you're paying through junior.
Yes.
And I haven't seen a lot of his product out there.
Right.
So I don't know how they're making their money. I don't know who it is that has them, Upper Deck or...
Not sure, actually, who ended up winning.
One of the two, I think. But I don't know how they're making their money on this guy for now. So either they're taking it as a loss leader till he hits the NHL. Sidney was a winner from Rimouski on, right?
Shane Wright appears to be Upper Deck at the moment. Yeah.
So Sidney was a winner from day one. McDavid was a winner from down in Erie days. And a lot of guys are. But it's a big gamble picking up. There's a couple of players right now that are out there that we'd have to really think twice, because it's not like you give them $5,000 against sales.
Right.
We're talking some big numbers to guarantee them, lock them in, and that's why not everybody's getting them. It's just the bigger companies, such as ourselves, Upper Deck Fanatics, that have really a shot at getting these guys.
Well, I mean, there are some I don't want to say smaller, but some more niche companies that are focused more on like one specific city or one, and they'll have some exclusive deals as well. And maybe that's the future of it. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Will companies always be willing to foot out a fairly large amount of money several years prior to them making the NHL? I'm not sure. It is at that point gambling. That's literally what you're doing.
Well, if you're a small company right now, and trying to get a foot in the door, you can virtually bankrupt yourself by going after a guy that you feel is going to be the next Sidney, Crosby, Connor McDavid, because you're going to have to come up with so much money up front and pay that, even if they don't pan out. And
some people may wonder, it's like, well, then how do agents get their due? And that's a very different thing, because agents will only have to, quote unquote, pay their clients if their clients get paid. It's not like imagine if in order for an agent to represent a player, they had to pay that player couple $100,000 at the age of 14 just to make sure that they had the right to represent them moving forward.
No, their trials and tribulations are a little bit different than ours. I mean, they got to fight the other agents to convince them to go with them. That's their shtick. But once they get them, there's no downside other than travel expense and a little thing. But they grab a player, and that player is worth 4% of a contract.
Yeah. Plus any additional.
Now you come into a what is it, $800,000 for an opening contract. But once they sign the long-term deal, $12 million a year for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant money. And I believe it's 20 points on any marketing deal.
Right. Which we've talked about this before, but if people don't realize, there are different percentages an agent will make based on the contract. There are the salary contracts that they make, which is fairly, I've used this word before, but boilerplate, more specific, especially if they're not like superstar and they're taking care of every bit of information in there. But 20% on any additional marketing over and above that. So different gradations of compensation. There's another follow-up question, Zach. He had a 3-part question. The third we'll share with another person who had submitted one. He said as a second question, do exclusive deals expire or run out? Because I've seen a couple that seemed to have vanished over my 15-ish years of collecting. Absolutely. I mean, it's a deal is a deal. Players may switch agencies. Players may get traded from teams, and players may switch their memorabilia.
Well, I can give you a few examples myself and other people. I know we had an exclusive deal with Austin Matthews, and when it was exclusive to us, but then we were kind of pushed to share the exclusive with Fanatics. As I mentioned, CAA is kind of pushing their players that way. There was no advantage to do that.
Right.
And then another one would be John Tavares. When he came, we had him for years when he was in New York, which was in the island. It wasn't the greatest market.
Yep.
Then he moves to Toronto, all the big hype about it. And then CAA is, well, we got to share him too. And our contract was coming to an end, but we had another half a year on it. And so, there was some arguing back and forth, but we convinced them to share it. John didn't want to move. I mean, he liked our company and et cetera. I believe AJ's had McDavid.
AJ's with McDavid is a pretty big story. If people don't know what happened there, we just talked about paying a player through juniors and then getting at least a year or so in the NHL. And I think he had a year in the NHL with McDavid.
They might have had a year, but they slow played. I think the agents slow played AJ, so they couldn't get all the product that they want. Otherwise, they would have loaded up for about 5 years, I think.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, that's tough to hear, and it's not a slight to anybody, but the contract expired, and McDavid ended up signing with Upper Deck.
To our knowledge, and I'm pretty, I was up on it for a while, so I think that's pretty accurate. Not sure it's 100%
we could be wrong.
Accurate.
It's speculation for sure, but I mean, those types of things happen, Zach. Just in general, yes, exclusives.
So we've lost guys. We've got guys because the contract came. I mean, we took Taylor Hall from somebody. I think we took him from AJ's, and it happens back and forth. We just got Chris Letang, who was with Your Sports Memorabilia. We share now, so it works in your favor, works against you. Our whole thing is treat the players really well, and hopefully they don't want to move, and that's the case with most of our premium guys.
Yeah, that definitely feels the case. The third question, which is kind of shared between Zach and another person who reached out to us via Instagram, Joshua Clost. Clost, I think that's how you'd pronounce it. From Zach, he said, I'm quote unquote beginner Sidney Crosby collector, but I've heard you say you won't sell an imperfect Sidney Crosby signature. What do you do with the bad ones? Do you destroy the picture pucker number? And then another the question from Joshua: if an athlete scuffs a signature, what do you do with those products? So fairly similar.
Okay, so what happens when we log in everything that goes down to a signing? We give the player the sheet. This is what you're going to be signing. And then at the end, when we get it back, that's when we hologram them. So it adds another layer of counts and accuracy. So we put the hologram on after the fact, count it again, inspect the signature for as perfect as we can get. Keep in mind, it isn't a science. So You're going to get some things like, we'll still get a few complaints that this isn't but Sidney Crosby collectors are looking for a perfect autograph all the time.
Yeah.
And thank God Sidney's pretty good at that.
Yeah.
If we feel that they're not going to accept it, then at that point, we may take it out of the mix, and our report to the player or the agent would be, we got 200 items signed. There were 5 smudge signatures, and they trust us, and we can show them pictures of the 5. Mm-hmm. Then we destroy the things. Some of the stuff that we get from less than premium players or A-list players, we will market, because there's a market for smudge signatures as long as they're authentic.
And as long as you market them as smudge signatures.
And so if we do that, we will give either a certificate of authenticity that'll say this was an imperfect signature.
Certificate with your beautiful signature on it.
Yeah, that's only my A-list signature.
Only the A-list signature, yeah.
So we will do that. In most cases, we don't like to do that because it just doesn't look good. But if there's a market for those guys that don't care that much, as long as it's authentic, then we'll sell those at a big discount, move them, get our cost of the materials out or something.
Yeah, like I think to answer both Zach and Joshua there, as you mentioned, sometimes it's different for Sidney because we want to kind of maintain the look and feel of what his autograph is once it reaches the marketplace. But the ultimate decision is that, yes, we will sell some of those items, but only as those items. We want to make sure, as you mentioned with the certificate of authenticity, it explicitly states that it's an imperfect signature.
Right.
Because we don't want it to make it to the secondary market with a standard COA and someone say, no, they sold it to me full price and this and that, like that kind of thing. The
quality of the goods has to reflect the price that you pay for it. So
exactly. And then third, actually, this is kind of a little add-on to Zach. And yeah, you know what? I'll say this, Zachary, a lot of good questions that you sent through. I think, Zach, you're the person who we would like to give this signed 8x10 for as we round out the last question.
Well, for sure. Oh, is it the last question?
Well, yeah, we'll sort of, there are a few more questions.
Because there's only been 1, 2, 3, 4, we've only answered 5 or 6. So we're going to give one to everybody.
We're going to give one to everybody.
We're going to give a signed item to anybody that submitted the question that we've reviewed today on.
Sure. So if you've heard your question, with the exception of Ryan the boy calling me out on being a lumberjack, how about not giving him one?
I just found a picture in the basement of him with Bobby Hull at the golf tournament that we did. And I took him down to see Wayne Gretzky when he was a kid. He's only like him and his brother and sister.
Amazing.
Down at Wayne's restaurant. They had their photo taken. So he's got enough stuff from
He's got enough stuff. We've looked after him, and he repays us by calling us lumberjacks. Well, listen, it's apple doesn't fall far from the tree, which I'm about to chop down because I'm a lumberjack. The last part of the question. Also, I've heard that Sidney's signature that he does on your pieces is exclusive to your pieces. How did it come to be this way? And I think what Zach is referring to is the fact that a signature by Sidney Crosby will have that certain look and feel. We mentioned it earlier in the episode. It's consisting of 8s and 7s to make it look like the name Sidney Crosby, only made up of 87. And that is true. When he signs for us, not just us, but anything that is exclusively meant to be, given away to a charity or sold as a collector's item, he will sign with that kind of perfect nature, but not always the case with other times he signs things, right, Dan?
Well, I told him that right at the beginning when he was a kid, he asked about, well, what should I do if somebody comes up to me in the street and I said, sign, please.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Those are the people that drive the business, and they'll wait an hour for your signature, and it's not going to hurt our overall thing. I had the same conversation with Wayne Gretzky. His agent was giving him a hard time for signing for kids outside of the hotel that we were having lunch in. And he said, "Oh, there's a bunch of kids out there waiting for your autograph." And I said, and Wayne says, "Well, I'm going to sign." He says, "That's what I do, you know?" And you're taking, he said, "Brian, what do you think?" Thinking that I would defend the agent.
Sure.
I said, "No, I mean, these are the guys that set the marketplace, that are the big fans, and that's why our industry exists. So no, you don't sign 1,000 things for them." Although Wayne's dad used to make him sign for everybody when he was alive, but Wayne will go out and sign, and we told Sidney, sign. If he feels that it's just somebody really taking advantage, like if he sees somebody push a kid out of the way to get a signature, he either won't sign, we generally won't sign for that guy.
Right.
Or if it's just a minor thing, but the guy was rude, he just scribbles his name.
Right.
And then, but for the most part, he'll sign. Sometimes he's very rushed. Some people get him as he's at a red light where he's trying to drive away when it turns green, and he'll, kind of rush the signature. But for the most part, he takes the time and signs for the fans in the street. And he does a good job, and Wayne Gretzky's done. And then you got a guy like Michael Jordan who will walk away. I don't know if I should tell this story. No, I better not. Well, it's a story Wayne told me. But anyway, but he'll come out of a restaurant and just I can't sign. I got to deal with Upper Deck. But people don't even ask. They don't
because they know now
because they know he's not going to sign for people in the street. Right. So it's different. I mean, he's the GOAT, but sometimes he's not the greatest person. Right?
Or he's made some decisions that kind of preclude him from interacting with the fans on that kind of basis. And Zach, kind of to finish that question off, why does it look different sometimes? Obviously, my dad mentioned sometimes if he's in a rush or this and that. There also is an element of like, if there's a fan off the street who wants a Sidney Crosby autograph, the assumption may be that maybe this person just wants, like in the spirit of collecting an autograph that way, this fan wants the autograph because the athlete is signing. It's not necessarily to resell it. It's not necessarily for the monetary value, which kind of splits the market into two avenues. One is the collector who's buying and may have an intention to sell. That is kind of part and parcel to what they're doing. And for that, we have the option of them buying from the website or from us. And the other is the collector that just wants it for part of their collection. And signing it slightly differently, whether they're in a hotel or it's for a signing for us, differentiates between the two of those things. If you ask Sidney for an autograph, the spirit of that is, hey, I would love this for my collection. Therefore, this is the signature you're going to get. It's slightly different than the other one, but that does kind of split and let us visually know what has been put into the marketplace for the purpose of collecting and then potentially getting returned financially versus just having it so you can hang it up and it was signed by the person, but you don't necessarily need everyone else to be able to look at it and say, yes, I remember that was like back in the first year of signing with Frameworth. That's what it looked like.
Right. Yeah. No, his signature hasn't changed a lot. And the other thing that happens too is the players aren't stupid. They see, 5 or 10 people, they stop for a few minutes to do it. They see the first guy that signed it run back to his car, get another binder full of stuff. And so they go, okay, you got to support them to some degree, but after a while it just gets like, okay, I know it's a business and you guys, so they're happy to sign 1 or 2 for, but to sit there all day and sign for fans, they got other things.
They got places to be. They got hockey to play. Come on, what are we doing? So look, great questions across the board. We obviously couldn't get to all of them. There were a ton, and we appreciate all of the support and everyone reaching out with the questions that you had. But if, hey, anything that we talked about kind of sparked up another question you might have, could be about the memorabilia industry. It could be working in the industry. It could be collectibles in themselves, the value of them inherently. How do you frame this and that? Whatever your questions are, you can reach out to us, SignOffPod@frameworth.com. We're going to be holding back some of our answers. We'll probably do another one of these in a month or so. We try to get to a Q&A episode once every month or thereabouts. So we will be holding those, and you may open yourself up to be able to get a free signed item as well.
Yeah, you never know what kind of mood I'm in. I've been away for a while, so everybody gets something. We'll figure out what we're going to send everybody, reach out, but it'll be an autograph something.
Yes, reach out to me if we did address one of your questions. Let us know what the question was, what your handle is. It's SignOffPod@frameworth.com, and we'll get you an 8x10 photo. I'll work with you one-to-one one to figure out what a suitable prize might be for that. But once again, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for your questions. Get us your questions if you have anything else. Join us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport, on Instagram at Frameworth Sports, and we'll see you in another week. For Brian Ehrenworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, myself, Mikey Ehrenworth, host of the Sign Off Podcast. This is us signing off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Ehrenworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers, Mikey Ehrenworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Ehrenworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!